disease. So can you touch on the benefits of fasting with inflammation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the opposite of fasting is eating and eating frequently. And a colleague of mine, his name is Dr. Don Klum, he did a patient population study where he had hundreds of his patients not remember everything they ate, because that's kind of hard to do, people to recall what they've eaten. I don't like those studies, but he had them write down anytime they ate something, meaning the definition of that would be any time they spike glucose and insulin. So it could have been some almonds they snacked on. It could have been a full-on meal. It could have been a protein shake, but he had them write down every time they ate something. And the average person was eating 17 to 23 times per day. So I've been saying the average American eats about 17 to 23 times per day. That is inflammation. You're never allowing your digestive system to take a break. You're overwhelming it. And I always talk about the analogy of a corporate worker that I call Sandra. And Sandra works 9 to 5. And let's say Sandra just worked 8 hours, 5 p.m. She's walking to her car. She's exhausted. She put in 8 hours of work. She's about to get into her car to drive home and relax and rest. And she gets a phone call from her boss saying, Sandra, we need you to come back in. A new project just came in. We need you to go back into the office and work on the project. So she does. She works on the project for 5 more hours. It's now 10 p.m. She's so exhausted. Going to her car, she gets the same phone call. Sandra, new project came in. We need you to come back to the office for another 5 hours. So if this happened to Sandra over and over and over again, she would be exhausted. We would wear her out. And this is exactly what we're doing to our digestive system when we do not practice fasting. It takes a lot of energy and resources, as I mentioned, to process a meal. And you're going to have a glucose and insulin spike. That's going to be inflammatory. So with fasting, you're not getting those glucose and insulin spikes. So it's keeping your insulin levels nice and steady. It's allowing your glucose levels to drop. And for a lot of people who do low carb keto with fasting, you get the production of ketones. And we know ketones are incredible signaling molecules that communicate with the mitochondria to produce more mitochondrial biogenesis. It also helps with inflammation. So that 1-2 punch of ketosis and fasting is really, really good for inflammation. And you're going to notice that because you're going to notice better digestive function, less acid reflux, less puffiness, less bloating. You're going to notice your joints and your ankles are less achy. You're going to notice your brain is getting turned on and you're more focused. You're going to notice a lot of cool things. And all of that is a result of your body lowering cell inflammation, which, to your point, Sarah, is the key for anti-aging and longevity.
But Ben, I thought you need food for energy, right? So
yeah,
shouldn't we wake up and eat? I mean, what I was so interested in is I just had Dr. Rick Johnson on, and we were talking about uric acid and processed food and fructose. And, I'm a mom of 3, so I've got to make things make sense to my kids, not just my clients who want to, are suffering from chronic disease, but I've got to make it make sense to my kids. And what he was saying is that fructose not only doesn't give you energy or ATP, right? The goal is ATP because that's true cellular energy. But fructose and processed foods actually steal away ATP. So not only is it not giving you energy, it's stealing energy from you. And these processed foods and carbohydrates, the grains, and even the gluten-free breads are anti-nutrients. They're stealing away the nutrients from your body, causing leaky gut, so that when you actually eat the healthy proteins and healthy fats, they're not getting absorbed very well because of the one bad meal. Now, should you not have a cheat meal once in a while? I'm not saying that, but do know that there is going to be a refractory period where your body's got to heal. And that's where fasting comes in. That's where, it speeds up the healing and that turnover. And then, taking the right gut supplements if you need that, and focusing on the proper diet to help heal the gut and give the body the nutrients. The cellular energy, I know you've talked about it a lot as far as the health of the cell and the inflammation of the cell. I call it the phase angle, and the ability for the toxins to get out of the cells and the nutrients to get in the cells. Because if we take in the nutrients, but they're not getting in the cell, it doesn't do you any good, right? So why don't you touch on what that means? What does it mean, that phase angle or the integrity of the cell walls?
Yeah, such an important question. And you nailed it, right? That's the phase angle. It's the integrity of that membrane. And when we think about, I mentioned the intelligence within the body. I used to ask the question, okay, where is the intelligence? Is it our DNA? Is it the mitochondria? Is it something else? And I know for many years, scientists believe that our intelligence was the DNA. And that premise is kind of sucks, because if you have bad DNA and bad genes, then you're pretty much, your destiny is determined by your genetics. And I don't like that, because that means if you have cancer in your family, it's just bad luck. And that premise was challenged by Dr. Bruce Lipton many years ago, where he said, all right, if that is their premise, the DNA is the intelligence, let's look at cells and let's remove the DNA and observe what happens next in the cells. And he did that. Dr. Bruce Lipton did that. And he noticed that the cells went on to live and function just fine for months, even though the DNA nucleus was removed, proving that it is not your genes that determine your destiny. Something else communicates with your DNA. So then he wanted to find out, all right, what is it then? So he would remove that cell membrane, and it would be instant death every time. Cell membrane was removed, instant death, which went on to show him and me that the membrane is where the intelligence is. Life begins and life ends in that cell membrane. So when we think about the human body, depending on the size of the human being, 50 to 70 to 100 trillion cells, every cell has that lipid bilayer, that protective layer made out of fat, cholesterol, saturated fat, and protein, which has these integral membrane proteins, these receptor sites integrated into them. And that's where all the hormones, all the nutrients, your oxygen, your thoughts attach to get into the cell. And then it communicates with your DNA to turn on good genes or turn on bad genes. But it has to do with the environmental stimulus, the food you eat, the thoughts you think, the lifestyle habits you have. If it's a negative or an inflammatory environmental stimulus, then the DNA produces inflammatory proteins. But if it's an anti-inflammatory food, nutrient, thought, like a loving, a grateful thought, then the DNA produces anti-inflammatory protein, which is super cool. So you said, Sarah, that that's the phase angle, which is true. Good things need to get in and bad things need to get out. Every time the cell produces energy, it creates free radicals, reactive oxygen species, cellular smoke, toxins, and that needs to get out of the cell. If there's too much cell membrane inflammation, good things will not get in efficiently. Bad things cannot get out. And that's where you get this buildup of toxins. These cells turn into senescent cells, and the body starts duplicating these senescent cells, and they just stay there, creating inflammation and disease if you don't deal with it. So that's what was happening to me. I had so much cell inflammation because of the toxins that it didn't matter how much I exercised or how much I fasted or how much keto I did. It wasn't until I had to go upstream and remove the toxins that were causing that membrane inflammation, then things were allowed to get in efficiently and the free radicals were allowed to be removed efficiently.
Yeah, and what you have to also realize is that these toxins that we're talking about, the mercury, the lead, the halogens, the bromide, fluoride, chlorine. So the cell, if it's not saturated with iodine, it's something called, let's go back to chemistry class, displacement. So if you need, every 100 trillion cells in the body needs iodine and has receptor sites for iodine, not just the thyroid. But if you don't have enough in there, then these nice little toxins like bromide and fluoride or mercury go into the receptor site. But if you are saturated with enough iodine, then it bounces off the toxins, and then the toxins then have to go through the blood and the liver to get expelled out of the body. Now, that also, we're going to get onto the liver in a minute, but that the iodine is also anti-inflammatory. So in two separate ways, it's working to detox the cells. It's pushing out the cells or the toxins out of the cells, keeping the new toxins from getting into the cells. And then you want to make sure, and I know, Ben, you're a proponent of electrolytes and making sure you have your salts and your good salts, not just the stripped sodium table salt, but salts like the accelerated ancient salt or other salts that actually plump up the volume of the cells and the blood to expel the toxins even more effectively out of the body. But that displacement theory is really important for everyone to understand, that if you don't have enough of the good stuff, the bad stuff's going to fit in. It's just kind of like when you don't have the good food in your refrigerator, you're going to reach for the donuts and the ice cream because it's there, right? So we want to crowd out the toxins with the good stuff, and that's going to keep the other stuff from being able to come in, while also reducing the inflammation in each cell and giving those cells great energy to pump out the bad stuff and the good nutrients to come in.